The Cycles Research Institute.
One of the things that happened with the harmonic theory was it predicted a structure which was exactly like music. It had a major chord and the musical scale and all of that,
Yes.
which was very fortunate because I'd already observed those things in cycles, and that's what I was looking for, something that did that.
Yeah.
It turned out that there were a few extra ones in there that weren't part of our scale. There was a couple of the black notes as well as the white notes, but there were some extra ones. And I had heard at some stage, I had a memory of having heard that Indian music had some extra notes in than what we have.
Yes.
So I went into the university music library and I found a book called An Introduction to the Study of Indian Music by E. Clements, written in 1912.
Yes.
Now, this was a nice man, an Englishman, who had studied Indian music and comprehended what they were doing.
Yes.
And he'd put it, but he'd explained it in more Western type terms, right? They would do it like this, and they would do something or other, and they do it naturally. He was analysing it, right? And the way he analysed it fitted well in with my way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And the notes have names. I don't know. I can't speak Indian properly, but pa, da, ni, sa, ri, ga, ma, fa.
Yes.
Now, that's the scale. That's equivalent to the frequencies that he gives would make that the key of F. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F, more or less.
Yes.
There's a slight difference that we use 440 for A now, not 450. But in past times, they did use 450 at one stage, and then it went 432 and back to 440.
Interesting.
Yeah. So any one note, like pa, is at 360.
Yep.
The ones at 180, one octave below, or 720, one octave above, are also represented by the same name pa, so they're all there.
Yes.
When we have a ratio of 3,
Yeah.
then we move horizontally. So this one is 240. 3 times that would be 720, which is one octave above that, so it's that same note, right?
Yes.
3 times that would be 1080,
Okay.
which, if we go down an octave, is 540, down another is 270, is that one. So each of these has a ratio of 3, but we will introduce the ratios of 2 to get back into the same range again, right?
Yes.
Then if you move diagonally northeast, you get times 5. Again, we're going to have to do the ratios of 2 down to get back. So if we take 5 times that, we get 1200, which is an octave above 600, which is an octave above 300. Right?
Yes.
And the same for each of these. So 2s, we're piling them all up on top of each other. 3s, we're moving this way, and 5s, we're moving this way.
Okay.
Now, these are the notes of one scale. In Western music, we consider that the end of it, end of the matter.
Yes.
Pythagoras kept saying, thought he could do everything with 2s and 3s. He didn't bring a 5 in.
Yeah.
He thought he could do it all with 2s and 3s. But there's a little problem that when you do that, you keep putting a 3 in, you go from C to G and from G to D, ratios of 3. If you keep doing that, eventually you end up coming back to the same note. But when you take 2 to the power of 19, 3 to the power of 12 and 2 to the power of 19, they're quite similar, but they're not the same. They're off by a little bit. And that was called the Pythagorean comma. Now, in this, we are not doing that. We are going to, when we go by some 3s and 2s and come back to nearly the same place, we come back to nearly the same place, not exactly the same place. So when we go down by 2, down by 2, down by 2, down by 2, up by 3, we didn't end up with 360, we ended up with 355 and 5/9. And that's the symbol that Clements used for this. That was pa, and that was pa with a little thing on it.
Yeah.
Or with a little asterisk and thing on it. So he did that. And one of the symbols I really love that he uses, when you go by a ratio of 7 from something, so we had, what's the sequence of that? Is 60, which will be 61, 22, 40. When we take 7 times this, we end up here, right?
Yeah.
When we knock it down a couple of octaves. And because it's got the 7 in, it is equivalent to knee flat, right?
Yeah.
That would be 210 if we took the half one, so it's very close to that. He made the flat by putting a little 7 on it, and I love that notation.
Yes.
And so he's got a ratio of 5 and a ratio of 7, lots of ratios of 2 and a lot of ratios of 3. He's got 4 ratios of 3, as many as you want of 2. He's got about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 9 or 10 ratios of 3, 4 ratios of 5 and a ratio of 7. Harmonic Theory has lots of ratios of 2, less of 3, less of 5, less of 7.
Yeah.
Exactly. This structure, they are tuning in to the vibrations of the Earth, the electromagnetic field, and the things, all of that.
Yes.
And so they can't tell you necessarily how they're doing it. They're just doing it. And some of the famous composers have said, I don't write this music, I just hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this diagram, it's interesting because it shows some of the extra notes, these little ones with the flat crossed, not just the flat, but the flat crossed. See, so we went from there was a slightly different one.
Yes.
And the sharps, and then the not quite sharps, and all of these. So it's this one being studied for the relationships in music that happen when you're playing in one key. You're doing this.
Yes.
When you modulate to a different key, you actually modulate to that. So you keep some of the same notes and some different ones.
Yes.
And you can modulate around like this. And sometimes people modulate several times, and then they can wander back again.
Yes.
And those things are contained in here, that you should be on slightly different frequencies in the modulated one. So when we have a fixed tuning thing like a piano is doing the wrong notes, when you're playing something like a violin, you can adjust that and do it correctly.
Yes.
Or when you're singing, you can do that.
Yes.
But on the guitar, you've got the fixed fret, you can't do it. Some of the guitars guys know this, and do you know what they do? They call it bending.
Bend it, yeah.
They bend it. Yeah. And there were some guys, I participated for a little while in a forum of guys that do guitar tuning. And these guys, as well as the standard 12-note scale, which gives you this stuff, there have been older systems of 5-note scales and 7-note scales, right? Pentatonic and whatever it's called.
Yeah.
They would also do a 19. It's funny you get the sequence 5, 7, 5 and 7 makes 12, 7, 12 makes 19, 19 and 12 makes 31. It's like the Fibonacci series, but slightly different. And 19 is a very good one. These happen to be the very good ones, the best ones for getting the good ratios in music that you want, nearly right. And so they mess around with doing 19 and 31 scales, and they draw diagrams of the keys and what you're in, and that quite interesting. A little bit like this, but a little bit different.
Yes.
So that's music in relationship to harmonics, and particularly Indian music.
Tuned in with nature itself.
Yes. Oh, yes. No, we haven't finished. Tuned in with nature itself.
Yeah.
Another thing in relationship to this, one of the things I realized is that when you have rhythm in music, it's like a very slow note. So, for example, if we were to say in Western music, let's supposing middle C was 256 cycles a second. It's actually about 260, but just to make the calculations easy, we'll say 256.
Yeah.
Then the next C down would be 128. We halve it. Go down another one, 64, 32, 16, 8. We can't actually hear an 8.
No.
We actually can hear it as a...
Okay.
It's right near rainbow frequency. 4, 2, 1. But at 2 cycles per second is actually 120 per minute. And a lot of music that's in the key of C is played at the rate of 120 beats per minute, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's and it's a good old key of C goes well with that.
So the rhythm is playing an audibly low note.
The rhythm is playing in an inaudibly low note. Exactly.
But the rhythm of that inaudible note is itself hearable.
Yeah. Now, I sometimes tell people who start to do octaves over huge ranges, like from planetary orbit to audible notes, I tell them, no, but it's not all octaves. You can't go all octaves. We call that the same note, but in harmonic theory, it tells you go 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, 2, 2, 3. You've got to throw a 3 in now and then.
Yeah.
So it changes key. So as we move up, and you'll see this in music, they make some chords. There are chords called 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, where you use C, E, G, D, and then they'll throw some more in every sort of second note. Now those chords, or you will use C, E, G down here and G, A, D up there and play those together. Now if you do them the other way around, it doesn't sound as good as if you do them that way, and that's because you want to go 2, 2, 2, 3, not putting them 3 over 2 thing at the other end. So
This is similar to what you found in rock formations.
Yeah, but when I looked at when I just decided, let's look at some of the famous composers and see if they do this.
Yeah.
So I looked at some Mozart, I looked at some Beethoven, and I read the speed they said you should play it at, and I worked it out into the key that they were playing in. And my expectation was that there'd be some ratios of 2, but there might be a ratio of 3, because so they might play a note, they might have one where we have to do a times 3 to get into the frequencies of the notes. And when I looked at Mozart and Beethoven, nearly every time they did that.
Good heavens.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I looked at a modern composer. One of the ones who states very accurately what tempo to be played at is Billy Joel. And I always liked Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And he does it right too. The interesting thing with him, he specifies the speeds to be played at very accurately, rather than the sort of things they use the others where you've got a bit of percentage doubt.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when you take his ones, it works out correct if A is at 450 cycles per second. Now, that's what they used to use in the classical times, but we use 440 now. So I always wonder whether Billy Joel's got his instrument just tuned that little bit up to 450. I'd like to find that out.
Yeah.
But that's 450 is the one used by the Indian music.
Yes.
And if we've talked about the Schumann resonance.
Yes.
If we take the ratios of the notes, those 7 notes in the main scale that we call do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, as we go up here, the ratios of the frequency of those to each other are specified by the integers 24, 27, 30, 32, 36, 40, 45, 48.
Yes.
If we take the Schumann resonance as about 7.5 hertz and multiply it by those numbers, we get those frequencies.
Good heavens. Yes. Wow.
So
this is art imitating life, or music imitating the frequencies of the universe.
Yeah. So that's the frequency. So I like. I come across all these people. It's another meme that people say A should be 432. Now they like 432. It's a nice number. It's 3 times 144. It's a good harmonic thing. But when you're doing it as cycles per second, it's no reason it has to be the right thing. And a lot of them advocate it's better. 440 is evil, 432 is good. But in fact, it's my opinion that 450 is good.
The Cycles Research Institute. cyclesresearchinstitute.org